guys, today we are going to have a bit of a challenging lesson. We're going to be putting everything we've learned together, and we're going to be starting to solve some complex word problems, okay? Now, this isn't going to be easy, and it's going to take you more than just this video to catch on to it, and we're going to do a whole bunch of these really tough, challenging word problems. It's pretty much the focus of math for years and years to come. Please put the date and the page number. I think I've been telling you guys the date wrong in the last couple of videos. I'll make sure to make a note when I post them. The date that should be on today's lesson is October 24th, and you should be on page 36. So there are two things to remember. Number one is to take your time. Please write these down on page 36. Yes, that's where we are, page 36. If you try and rush through these things, you won't get it right. You'll miss things, you'll interpret the question wrong, things won't work out right, and then you'll have to go back and redo the whole question anyway. So take your time, do not rush. Second, read the question carefully over and over and over again until you understand what's happening in the situation. Sometimes that's going to take 5, 6, 7 times of reading it slowly, carefully, trying to think about it, figure it out. If it takes you 10 times, but you understand it at the end of that 10th time, that's all that matters, okay? I won't be asking you to do like 50 questions like this in 45 minutes. That would be mean. So I want you to take your time. So here is an example of one of the kind of complex word problems I'm talking about. And this problem is going to go on page 37. I should have given you a copy of this in class today. If I didn't, please don't copy this entire problem down. I will get you a copy. But take the copy I gave you and tape it in on page 37. So let's just read this first silently. I want you to pause the video, read it silently to yourself. Pause the video in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Read it out loud to yourself. Now I'm going to read it out loud for you, and please, if you didn't read it silently, you really need to, guys. Do what this video is telling you to do. So in a certain algebra class, there are a total of 350 possible points. These points come from 5 homework sets. I'm going to make some marks on here for what's important. 5 homework sets that are worth 10 points each. Total of 350 possible points, and 3 hour-long exams that are worth 100 points each. A student, some random student, has received homework scores of 4, 8, 7, 7, and 9, and the first 2 exam scores are 78 and 83. Is it possible for this student to receive an A in this class? And if so, what is the minimum score on the 3rd exam that will give an A? And then it asks you, what about a B? So we have 2 separate things going on here. We have, how are we going to get an A? And then, how do we get a B? I suggest you read this 3, 4, maybe 5 times until you really understand how these students are going to be graded in this class, what the professor is looking at, how they're going to end up getting an A or a B. So pause and reread if you need to. All right, I'm going to dive right in, guys. We know that there is a total of 350 possible points. Total is the answer to some kind of problem. So I'm going to put an equal sign and a 350. I'm going to be writing an equation here, guys. And these points come from 5 homework sets that are worth 10 points each. Okay, so these homework questions, this guy got a 4, an 8, a 7, a 7, and a 9. So that's the total for all of their homework. Let me move this over so I have some more room. And then on the first 2 exams, this person got a 78 and an 83. And there is this 3rd test that's an unknown test. What's supposed to be a question mark? It doesn't look like one. I'll put a variable. Some unknown test, let's call it P, that we haven't taken yet, that this student hasn't taken. So we really need to find out what they need to get on this test in order to end up with an A in the class. To do that, we have to understand something about this. We have to understand how many points they would need to get an A. An A is an average of 90%. Okay, I think you guys know that. And if I take 90% of these 350 points, I could type into my calculator 350 times 90 written as a decimal is 0.9, and that would give me 315 points. That's what would end up with an A in this class. So this guy in this class, or this girl, instead of needing 350 points, they need their total amount of points to be 315, and that would give them the A that they're looking for. So let's find out if it's possible. I'm going to erase this stuff down here. Please make sure you're writing everything as I write it, and rewind if you haven't done so. And we're going to take all of these different constants right here, and we're going to add them up, okay? So I'm going to break out my calculator. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do the math. 4 plus 8 is 12, plus 7 is 19, plus 7 is 26, plus 9 is 35. So I know that I've got 35 between all of those things. And then plus 78, plus 83. And I need to add those up. 35 and 78, that's going to be 108, 113, plus 83. And 113 plus 83 is going to be 196. All right, so I've simplified all of these numbers here into 196. So I come up with this much more simple equation here. 196 plus P equals 315. So the problem asks us, can he get an A? So we need to find that out by subtracting and solving for P. This P is going to tell us what he needs to get on the final test in order to get an A in this class. When we do this, we end up with P equals 119 points. Is how much you should have gotten when you do that subtraction. Well, this presents a problem because there are only 100 possible points on the test. So we can say that no, this guy cannot possibly get an A in this class. We combined his homework scores and his previous 2 test scores, and there's just no way he can get this 315 points possible in order to get an A. But now let's see if we can figure out what he needs to get a B. See if he can get a B in this class. So all of his previous scores added up together are still 196. We still have this unknown test score here, but now instead of 315, we have to figure out how many points this guy needs to get a B. Well, a B is going to be an 80% or higher. So we're just going to take 350, which are the total number of points possible in the class, and multiply it by 0.8, and that'll tell us how many points he needs on the final test. Or no, sorry, that'll tell us how many points he needs to get a B in the class. And this guy only needs a total of 280 points in the class between all his homework and tests to get a B overall. So now let's take a look at this equation that we have. We have 196 plus P equals 280. We are once again going to subtract 196 from each side, and we are going to end up with 84. So the grade he has to get on his final test in order to get a B in the class is a minimum of an 84 points out of 100, or an 84%. Now, a couple things I want you to notice about this question and how we solved this question. There were probably 8, maybe 9, 10 different steps we had to do and different ways we had to understand this question before we could come up with our answer. But it all started out with an equation that we wrote, an equation with a variable and an equal sign. And then we simplified that equation and we had an understanding of what the problem was asking us and what all of this stuff meant so that we could figure out what we were really looking for. It's not easy, guys, and it's going to take a lot of different exposure to challenging questions in order for you to really have a good grasp of how to do this. If you didn't write all the notes down or didn't show all the work for how we got this answer, I need you to rewind and write that down. It's very important that you do so. Your reflection question today is a question that's very similar to what we just did. So understanding the concept behind this question shouldn't be too difficult. I want to see if you can do the math to solve this question, okay? So you need to answer the questions in Edmodo. You need to say, can this person get an A? If so, what's the minimum score that they need to get an A? And then what about a B? Type your response into Edmodo. If you don't understand, you need to give me specific questions and you need to give me some proof that you've really made an attempt on this. Okay, guys? Thanks so much. I look forward to reading your responses.